folks, this is Lee Murphy, the artist behind Art by Lee Murphy and the creator of all the art stuff and creative stuff you see here on this channel. Here we have an oil on canvas, 30 inches tall, 24 inches wide, of a collection of shark's teeth I found on the beaches around here off and on. It's just a few that I have. And it's an example I thought I'd bring up here as using, first off, realistic objects in an abstract way and using them as tools to build an abstract composition where, rather than just random bits of blobs and color and shapes and forms and lines, they're actually things that folks can recognize. So it kind of helps lead into kind of an abstract tone of artwork and philosophy on that too. And I also thought it's a pretty good example of, in my case anyhow, I like to think so, of how using generally the least favored colors on a palette can still make a pretty dynamic painting. If you don't like the colors, you can pop up the darks and lights and stuff and make something with a little bit of interest. And if I do say myself, this is a fairly good example of using a very limited palette in a more dynamic way. And then I started to float off into philosophy on this thing too. It reminded me of a novel I read years ago by Dan Simmons. It's a series actually called Hyperion, about people who have, just in sci-fi where actually the World Wide Web turned into something where you could actually transport literally through the portals into other worlds and dimensions and stuff. And one of the worlds, I think, if I remember correctly, was called Hyperion. And humanity brought along other things from good old Earth, and one of them being dolphins to populate the seas. And it turns out, once they turned dolphins loose in this pristine, perfect, Eden-like ocean, they didn't thrive. And thanks to the magics of science fiction writing, this advanced human civilization was able to actually communicate with the dolphins. And one of the researchers asked why the dolphins weren't thriving in this pristine, perfect, beautiful ocean, and their reply was, "There are no sharks." And that got me to thinking that, that kind of makes sense. If you have nothing to push against, if you have nothing to strive against, how do you really define, what it means to be alive and your purpose? Nothing to defend against. And also just reading Michael Shermer's book on good and evil, and he refers to something called St. George in retirement, and I don't think it's his quote, but he quotes two of it, where basically when we lose things to strive against, lose things to be afraid of, and test our mettle against, are we really even living? And these are teeth from sharks that have been long gone for, they're like millions of years old and such. So that's kind of what it got me thinking of too, where maybe that's a big part of the civilization we have right now, is we've lost so much that we needed to strive against that we never really discover so many parts of who we are as people, plumbing the depths of our souls and a lot of the other dark depths too, but we still need to figure out what they are. Anyhow, but back to the artwork itself. When I made this painting, I did not really think of what I just blabbed on about. It's kind of, and I take another philosophical step back, that when we create artwork, even though we have some grand idea, some purpose, some message behind the work that we create, we still have to step back from that, because everybody's going to come to it on their own conclusions, and it's really not our place to dictate what people should think to a nuanced detail about our work. That's part of the joy of artwork, is discovering our own philosophical gems when looking at work. And if we're lucky, people will look at our work long enough to think their own thoughts and draw their own conclusions and improve their inner decor, much like that would be the exterior decor of, for example, using this to decorate the walls of a house, but also using the concept of the art that we come to from it to decorate the inner walls of our inner being. Anyway, I'll get off on that too. Get off of that particular woo-woo concept. But back to when I made this painting, I wasn't thinking anything like that. I just really grooved on the shapes and the fun little textures and details, and whether or not I could make it really look like that wonderful glossy, semi-glossy shine of the bluish gray of these teeth, which you have to really train your eye to see, otherwise you won't find them on the beach. They look distinctively different. Once you learn how to see what a shark's tooth looks like on a beach, you never unsee it. And it's funny to see people finally learn how to pick up shark's teeth, and they're like, wow, I just walked right by so many of these and never noticed. Kind of like art. But back to the point I was trying to make, when I made this painting, I was just grooving on it, on the creation of it, and the philosophical stuff came later. And it changes. And that's another thing to keep in mind for the people who are your audience. Their perceptions, hopefully, if you're lucky, your art will have enough of an effect on them for their perceptions of your art to change over time. I mean, that's what gives it added value, one would think. So yeah, it's one thing I have to really keep in mind is I have my own opinions about my art and why I made it and what it's for and how it improves my mental well-being much as well as, you know, the well-being and aesthetic value of my house and wherever I want to hang it up. But I can't impose it on others because I know that my perceptions of it will change from day to day as well, and that's what kind of makes it cool. So hopefully that concept helps if you give it a little bit of thought about it, and thank you for watching.